Shalom, fam, and welcome to the second day of the Easter conference. And today's sermon is coming from the verse and the scripture 1 Corinthians 15, verse 21. And we'll be getting in there as the program kindly starts. So let's get into it. So before we actually start, I want you to notice the pattern that from the first day up to we go to the third day, we'll be getting our services from the book of Corinthians. So reading the first of Corinthians chapter 15 verse 21, it says, "For since by men came death, by men came also the resurrection of the dead." So today's topic is called having power to choose. And as we read it again, it says, "For since by men came death," I want you to notice it is by men that death came into the world. So we chose for death to come into the world by the disobedience that were done by our parents, Adam and Eve. They were the ones who brought death into the world, and then it then came down by generations, and that's how men brought death into the world. Going down, it says, "By men came also the resurrection of the dead." So, first of all, we were the ones responsible of bringing death into the world, but we are also the ones responsible of bringing resurrection into the world. But how come we also brought death, but then we also brought resurrection? And in this service, we want to mainly focus on a question that it was Jesus who brought what? Resurrection into the earth. But how come the scripture refers it that men brought resurrection into the world as if it was someone who just randomly woke up in the morning and just decided to bring resurrection without any plan or any strategy that had ever been created? So that's what we want to look at. How come the scripture is referring Jesus, God in the form of a human being, as men? It isn't taking Jesus away from the category of men, it is putting him into the category of men. But does he belong there in the category of men, since men are considered as sinful and the ones that brought death? We cannot put Jesus in the same category of men, since men also brought death and they also what brought resurrection. So we want to mainly focus on what qualified Jesus to be in the category of men, and then made the scriptures right that men brought resurrection. It didn't specify that Jesus brought resurrection, but it says that men, also meaning that mankind, everyone, brought what? Resurrection into the world. But how did everyone else help or contribute in Jesus bringing resurrection into the world? That's what we want to focus. So let's get into the scripture. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 21, it says, "For since by men came death, by men came also the resurrection of the dead." So, as my question said, how come Jesus is being put into the category of mankind? What qualifies him to be put in a category of a lower rank than him? And what also makes the scripture say that all of mankind brought resurrection into the earth? It's because Jesus, reason why he's put in the category of mankind is because when he came, he first took on flesh, and then he also was then crucified. So, first of all, the first step of salvation was taking on flesh. For him to take on flesh, he had to be born by a woman. So, we'll get there about ladies' expression, where you talk that even Jesus needed a woman to come into the earth because women are important figure in the Bible. But that will be another service for another day. But also looking at it, Jesus, to be qualified as man, he also had to be born from a woman, and then take on flesh. So this is number one reason that qualified Jesus for ruling mankind and making him an umbrella word for mankind. So Jesus, we see him saying that, "For since by men came death, by men also came the resurrection of the dead." And I said it, there was no other person who woke up and decided the resurrection plan, but it was only what? Jesus. So, Jesus, by taking flesh, he qualified himself as man. And by qualifying himself, that's what made him qualified for ruling mankind. And as he was also crucified, he also died, making him also qualified for being the ruler of hell and other things. That's all that we talked about. But anyway, going back, it says, "For since by men came death, by men also came the resurrection of the dead." So, looking at this, Jesus came on earth, right? He was born and he died. So, by being born, it qualified him to rule the living because he has an understanding of what it is to be human. And also, by dying, it qualified him to be the ruler of people, of the dead people, of hell and everything. That's why there's a scripture that says he has the keys of earth and hell. So, by being born, he was qualified to rule mankind. By dying, he was qualified what? To rule the dead. So it means that by being qualified and having all of this, it shows us that that's why he was put in the category of mankind. So Jesus now is a representative of mankind. That's why when you are told to accept him, when you are told to do the salvation prayer and believe that he died and rose from the dead, that is the essential things that the Bible tried to emphasize, so that he died and was resurrected from the dead. So when we are saying that, we are meaning that the same blood that was able to do all these miraculous things, that qualified to be the ruler of mankind, that qualified to be the ruler of the dead, may it also cover me and put me into that category. So that's what makes us people who has also been born again to say that no, we were the ones who also brought what? Resurrection. Because that same blood, once you are washed by that blood, you become one with it. So we now become one with the body of Jesus Christ, making us also partakers of his body, making us also the people who had the plan of salvation, the people who also brought resurrection. So this was the message for the second day. We just want you to have that understanding that you are the one who also brought resurrection. You are the one who also partook in the plan of salvation by Jesus Christ. That's why today's topic was called Having Power to Choose. And we'll be going to the third Easter conference that you see tomorrow. And I want to thank you for listening to this. And if you have any understanding or any feedback about this, you want to share your experience about the Easter conferences, would kindly suggest that you go on our website and tell us the feedback. So thank you. This was me, Tavana Shevnasa, the host, and thank you and shalom.
I know we have to